It was a creed written into the founding documents that declared the destiny of a nation. Yes, we can. It was whispered by slaves and abolitionists as they blazed the trail toward freedom. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
It was sung
by immigrants as they struck out to the shores, pioneers who pushed westward against the unforgiving wilderness. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
It was the call of workers organized, women who reached for the ballots.
From WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network, the title of this episode, Old People in Louisiana Lose Medicaid Benefits and May Die. We're working on a title here. We'll try to be more efficient with our words. But nonetheless, the theme here is that 37,000 residents of Louisiana that happen to be old and disabled will lose their Medicaid benefits on the 1st of July. Why are they losing these benefits? Because of a no-tax pledge by disciples of the former governor Bobby Gentle, who has rode off into the sunset. This is part of this so-called no-tax pledge. Is nothing more than a gateway to our inhumanity to people, particularly old and disabled people in the country. This is part of the GOP's pledge of no new taxes. Now, the problem with no new taxes is without taxes you can have no progress. And when they eliminated taxes in the state of Louisiana that funded these types of situations, now the state of Louisiana is faced with thousands of old people and disabled people having to leave their care facilities. This is a crime against humanity. There's no doubt about that. We look at it from the Times-Picayune in New Orleans, Louisiana, and also from KSAL TV in New Orleans, Louisiana. I believe it may be in Baton Rouge. But nonetheless, the headline is here, the Louisiana Department of Health said the agency will notify 37,000 Medicaid recipients whose eligibility to receive benefits could end, but it effectively would end. They may have to move out of their nursing homes, group homes, because of lack of state funding. The letter will be mailed on Thursday to Medicaid patients with developmental disabilities and those who receive home-based services to get recipients time to develop attorney plans. How can one develop attorney plans without proper funding? The health department also will evaluate any eligibility options available, and we cannot provide services with no money to pay for them. That is from the agency's Secretary Rebecca G. The proposal could force nursing homes to close, leaving more than 25,000 people unemployed. That's according to the Louisiana Nursing Home Association. So this has a double barrel problem here with forcing not only old people and people with disabilities out of their nursing home care, but at the same time thousands of people would lose their jobs over this so-called no new taxes pledge. The worried calls from Broadway Elderly Living Center, support for a 90-year-old father, Korean War veteran, and 86-year-old mother may get cut off. That is from David Gerbert, wrote on social media. Now, these are things that are actually happening to real people. and more than 1 million people are a part of the Medicaid program in Louisiana. Last month, the Louisiana House of Representatives approved a state budget that would cut 4 Medicaid programs for disabled and elderly people. That's from the Times-Picayune. The House version of the budget included $538 million in state health care cuts, citing documents from the health department. That is a lot of money. The 4 programs are optional programs under Medicaid that the state does not have to provide to maintain its status as a Medicaid provider. The largest of the 4 programs is slated for elimination: Medicaid long-term care special income level program, which provides Medicaid to the elderly, blind, and disabled with incomes between $750 a month and $2,250 a month or less. The group includes 17,000 people living in nursing facilities, 2,000 in group homes, those with developmental disabilities, and 7,000 receiving certain waivers from the health department, and hundreds of others in community-based programs. According to Louisiana Nursing Home Association, said Medicaid's long-term special income level program provides health services for about 80% of nursing home residents. That is a lot of people. The health department would need $648 million to fund the program slated to be cut. Now, according to Jim Tucker, he is CEO of Care Corp, a non-profit that operates 12 nursing homes in Louisiana. Residents could be affected by the grim news. Our patients are old and they are frail. They have multiple health issues. And Tucker used to be a former Speaker of the Louisiana House. The stress of coming to realize they're going to lose their funding that allows them to stay in a nursing home and no other known option, I believe, could kill them. That is actually a fact. Many of these people will die from the trauma and perhaps have already died since they have got the notice. The Senate has not voted on the budget yet. That's from the Times-Picayune. The budget shortfall is largely a result of elimination of certain state taxes, which were set to expire on the 30th of June of this year. Residents are deemed eligible for benefits. They have to be discharged from their nursing facilities overnight, leaving their families to scramble to find other housing options, the vital health care services they require to continue to live. That's from Mark Berger, Director of Louisiana Nursing Home Association. Changes to the Medicaid system, however, will not happen overnight. The state would have to get approval from the Federal Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and nursing home residents could appeal the request, Tucker said, and no doubt they will appeal the requests there. We have been knowing about this, but it's real and not about the letter. It's about the faces of real people who we are serving for years and years. That's Sister Anne LeConte of the D Notre Dame. That is a faith for Chateau D Notre Dame, a faith-based retirement community. It told CNN affiliate WVUE. She added, hopefully we won't have to work with it because our legislature will find a solution to that. That is, as one would say, wishful thinking on the part of people, no doubt about it. And it happens many times in these states that unfortunately it is one of those things that occurs. This is, in fact, I was just looking at the station here. It is WSAT, I believe, here in, not sure where it is right now. We don't need to think about it, but nonetheless, from the Times-Picayune, basically the same thing. There's a picture here of John Bell Edwards with his wife and the Rebecca G., head of the health department. This is on April the 8th that they were all sitting here. And this is basically recounting what has happened here, and Medicaid recipients need to be warned that the clock is ticking because the state's family values. Republicans are guided by a different set of 10 commandments than the rest of us. The commandment you're familiar with would say, "Thou honor thy father, thy mother, honor thy days may be long upon the earth, which the Lord God giveth thee." But the commandment of our state Republicans, "Thou shalt not raise taxes." And this is an article here in the Times-Picayune by Jarvis DeBerry, a columnist here in the Times-Picayune. Now this is on May the 12th, just a few days ago that this article was written, and many people, he goes on to say, may not have believed that it would be a new day once we move past a governor whose allegiance with Grover Norquist and his phony organization, and not the people of the state. I believe it. I believe that once the pathological, ambitious Bobby Jindal was out of the governor's mansion, that once we had something other than a governor taking ideological stance, he would believe could help facilitate a quantic quest to the White House that would be better off. But Jindal left a collection of Republicans in the Louisiana legislature and adopted his no new tax pledge. That has been a Republican pledge throughout. And the massive tax cut, it appeals to people because people see that they will not pay the taxes. They keep more, quote unquote, of their income if they have any income to keep. But however, in an industrialized capitalist society, the problem is when you have very low taxation, the results of that, you will not have development within your community, within your state. So what happens is many of these low tax states, Nevada, for example, has a high regressive sales tax, but I believe it has no income tax, and some of us that have historically not had income tax don't play into it. But Texas, for example, so you have neglect of the education system, which means the school children of the state are not being properly educated. Your higher education system inherits these people. It's in shambles. So you really don't have any basis to develop your state beyond where it is. So you have to depend on people from other states, other countries, coming to your state to perform these critical functions. For example, Florida, which still has a very large agricultural economy, and tourists, so-called snowbirds, tourists, etc., that supplement their parasitic way of life in Florida. And of course, in certain areas down the H, you have a large number of transplanted people from New York and New Jersey that are retired there and giving income to Trump's adopted land. But these kind of things are anomalies in the economic lexicon. They don't go on forever. There's a day, quote unquote, of reckoning now. We're in this biblical reference thing here with Mr. DeBerry. So what you have is a situation in Louisiana where they were opportunistic. This is Bobby Jindal, and people went along with it, and now their relatives are being forced out of nursing homes, and many of these elderly people don't have relatives to take them on. So what do they go to homeless shelters for the elderly, or do they just simply die? Many of them will just simply die because they're getting specialized care at these facilities, and even at home, dialysis, etc. They would not be able to get in the streets. So basically, you're committing a genocide in Louisiana, and Louisiana is not alone. In many states, you will have states that will curtail their Medicaid obligations, and the administrative people there and their lackeys are set in motion to disqualify as many people as is humanly possible from their roles. In other words, as we say in IT, they are scraping people from their roles, literally, that are fully, these are the ones that are fully qualified to be on the programs. Now, but where it really stands out is in these nursing and specialized facilities. Most of these states, the majority of the people that get Medicaid, or a lot of them, in Louisiana, I think we have about 1 million, very poor state. So this is one of the problems that you have when you have a very, to look at it now, the Republican chair, Lance Harris, etc., created a House budget that doesn't include funding for Medicaid, though they created a budget that doesn't fund those programs. Harris and Henry don't think it was right for the governor's administration to send a letter. Well, it was, in fact, correct to do that, and the letters are out there, and we understand what Tucker had to say. The letter is a is scary, but it's not a tactic. I would imagine there's going to be an extreme adverse reaction from everyone who gets the letter, and I don't blame them. Well, no doubt about that. From Rebecca G., Real People and Emotional Help Secretary, said the letters were mailed on a Thursday. So, again, this person here, Jarvis DeBerry, is a deputy opinion editor at the New Orleans.com. He's also at the Times-Picayune. So this is a story from the state of Louisiana. Let me just move on here to the various races that occurred on Tuesday across the U.S. Now, there were many races here, and let's see where we go first. We'll go to Nebraska. And the race for Senate, this is Deb Fischer, who is supported by DJ Trump, features a pair of women with ties to agriculture, and our own Jane Raybon, I think that's how she pronounced the name. Fisher, who is in ranching. Raybon is evidently a Lincoln City council type, and a grocer. Defeated a number of other Democrats in the race. In an interview, Raybon said Nebraskans are ready for an independent-minded leader. They want someone who will listen to their concerns about the future of health care, Social Security, and Medicare. So you can understand where she is going here. This is from, incidentally, Warren Buffett's newspaper, the Omaha World Herald. And the other race out of there, Eastman rides a progressive wave to the Democratic nomination. This is in the 2nd District. Kara Eastman pulled off a surprise primary victory Tuesday in the Omaha. Democrats had tapped the not-for-profit executive to take on incumbent Don Beacon, Representative Don Beacon. Eastman and former Representative Brian Ashford traded off the lead throughout Tuesday night, but her lead became insurmountable when the unofficial results came out there. I'm probably very humble and honored to accept the nomination, Eastman said. She said it's appropriate this came after Mother's Day because she chose to run after watching her own mother battle cancer. This Ashford had several advantages in the race: superior name recognition built up over decades of services. He was in his 70s, and support of the quote-unquote party bosses' campaign funds. Eastman overcame all that with a spirited grassroots campaign, which is good. She blanketed the area with yard signs. Yard signs are an old-school approach. Particularly in certain areas, it shows support that you have because it's in yards, and when a person places a yard sign in their yard, they show immediate support, and it psychologically it is impressive. Ashford pitched himself as a moderate voice of bipartisan cooperation. Eastman touted her status as the only lifelong Democrat in the race and took a hard line on the issues. She said she would push for single payer, that's Medicare for all, and our struggle for the $15 hike there. She also was able to harness the enthusiasm of the party's energized base, which is eager to aggressively take on DJ Trump and his characters. She held 1,126 vote advantage at midnight, according to the Secretary of State. There were 2,375 early votes left to count from Douglas County, another 600 provisional votes, but Ashford and are likely to split the uncounted vote tallies there. The candidates traded early leads Tuesday night. Eastman herself would only say she was cautiously optimistic. Ashford struck an upbeat, this is the fellow there, around 10 o'clock, said the voters in the 2nd District are looking for a representative who will respond to their needs. When I left Washington, he had been in Washington at one time. The results were not what Team Ashford expected, and at one point he asked some supporters what the count was, and they said Eastman was up by 100 votes. Eastman will now face his Beacon character, who knocked Ashford out of office in 2016. Beacon was unopposed in the primary. He described Eastman as genuine, but suggested her positions are too far to the left to succeed in November, he hopes. And there's this whole argument about Medicaid for all and what it would cost. Well, Medicaid for all, on the front side, there would be some costs involved, but on the back side of it, medical costs would lessen, because what would happen there, as with Medicare, there is a percentage taken out of your FICA. That would be just increased, and of course for those that don't pay taxes, they wouldn't have to worry about it. But he also acknowledged that midterm elections headwinds that come when the party holds all levers of government. So this is an update 6 hours ago by Joseph Morton and Roseanne Morning. The Omaha Herald in Omaha, Nebraska. Let's move on to Oregon. Kate Brown wins the gubernatorial primary there. She has been the governor since she took on the expired term of the former governor there. She collected 82.6% of the vote cast. She'll face Beulah, Bend, Oregon, a right-wing outpost. Beulah signaled on a Tuesday night that he will push for the type of robust discussion. He wants a lot of debates. He wants 10 debates. He won't get them, but he'll get some debates. Nature of Brown's primary opponents. One comes as Neville of Eugene and Ed Jones of Redmont, reported raising or spending any money. There was no public debates there. So Brown became governor in 2015. She replaced John Kessenhammer, who resigned. She had served. She lives in Southwest Portland. She had served 17 years in the legislature, and she was 6 years as Secretary of State in Oregon. Since being elected in 2016 to finish the rest of Kitson, I'll get him right here in a minute. Used to could pronounce his name anyway. Kitson Harbor. Any term, and as of Tuesday, Brown's campaign had $3.7 million. $2 million was left over there. The other campaigns down to $1 million it was. So the general election turns out to be less expensive. Brown could use her extra money to try to elect a Democratic supermajority. So that is out of Portland. Let's go out to Idaho. Paulette Jones, Aboriginal and Native American, wins the nomination to be governor. She'll run against some character named Brad Little. Let's go to the Spokesman Review. That's in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Brussels Little for Idaho there. And this is by Betsy Z. Russell of the Idaho Press Tribune. Nonetheless, this is Dateline Boise. Brad Little topped a crowded field of Republicans, capturing his party's nomination for governor. In a contentious race, Little won 37.3% of the vote. And the Congressman Raul Labrador had 30.9% of the vote, and the position developer Tommy Esquish, I suppose. In other words, they were bunched here all around 28.2%. So it was a very crowded primary. Paulette Jones to the Senate, a two-term state representative, former Coeur d'Alene tribal council member, pulled an upset win in Idaho. Now this is on against a longtime the party's 2014 nominee out of Boise and longtime school board member A.J. Blankoff. She'll be the first woman to be a major party nominee for governor in Idaho, and would be the first Native American Aboriginal if she were to win. Jordan slammed her election night bash in Boise instead of joining with her supporters a few blocks away at a Boise bar where a band played and noise was deafening. Her supporters cheered as the race was called in her favor. She said she wanted to bring all the people's voices together. Little was upbeat in the early results, showing him in the lead. We made over 50,000 phone calls. Little said, there's a lot of phone calls out there. I've been around elections for 45 years. And it's most of the negative gubernatorial campaign I've seen as from a long time GOP Secretary Ben Eupser. Added, I didn't like it. Nonetheless, this Labrador character was a four-term Congress type and co-founder of the House Freedom Caucus, who surprisingly trailed far behind the other two in Butch Otter is the outgoing governor, didn't run for re-election. So we won't go into the other races in Idaho. But this in itself was an interesting race there of how it all was split up. Old Little was only less than 40% of the vote he got, whereas Paulette Jordan incidentally was not the anointed party person. She was a Bernie Sanders person, a progressive person, particularly the first district, which runs from West Boise, to the Canadian border. So it is out in Idaho, a pretty place there. Unfortunately, a lot of right-wingers have moved in to Idaho, but the Aboriginal people have always had a very strong position in Idaho. And from the Washington Post here, where I originally picked this up, the election saw a historic number of Democrats turned out. The Boise precincts, home to the state's largest Democratic base, ran out of ballots. They're double the turnout of Democrat votes in 2014. About 25,000 Democrats cast vote for governor. Last night, 64,000. That was still dwarfed by 186,000 who voted in the GOP primary. This is in a state that DJ Trump won by 30 points. But that is not a Native American populations have historically been very important in our part of the state, and we've increasingly growing Latino population. These two groups are at the forefront of the changing diversity. That is from Justin Vaughn, a political scientist at Boise State. Ms. Jordan is 38 years old in her second term in the House there in Idaho. Women hold 23 of the 70 seats. Before that, she held elected posts at the Coeur d'Alene Tribal Council. Jordan, who won her seat in the House in a Republican district, emphasized public land protections, a key issue in the state. Always has been an issue out west, where half of the land is public. She also talked about the issues that motivated liberals' expansion of Medicaid, changing of marijuana cannabis laws. Medicaid expansion looks likely to be on the ballot in November. It has gathered 56,000 signatures there. While the state voters generally pick Republican candidates, Jordan energized support who said the contender drove the same kind of enthusiasm they felt for Bernie Sanders. Idaho Democrats caucused in record numbers that year. They backed Bernie Sanders, like a lot of working people did. In California, we have more laws on the books. I've always said you cannot sneeze without getting a permit. Now, this is new faces in Idaho look like the Pena family moved there 3 years ago and searched for a more conservative, community. Now, this not the types of Latinos they wanted to see. In Idaho, you have freedom. You can feel the difference. People feel freer. They are friendlier. They are more open. Well, I don't know about that. I hate to tell Pena, the white supremacists, they are not that open. Vaughn said Idaho's wave of newcomers may shift the demographics, but those transplants aren't voting out of step with lifelong residents, at least for now. Well, no doubt some. That's the same thing I encountered in Utah. Let's do the sports here. Starting with the NBA. Unusual occurrence there. I thought the Cavaliers would beat our Celtics, but nonetheless the Celtics prevailed. LeBron James got his 42 points, but the final score was 107-94. Celtics over the Cavaliers. They now lead the series 2-0. Very, very unusual there. And let's go to the one game also in hockey. We had the Lightning and the Caps. Lightning 4-2 there. And the Tampa Bay Lightning. And now the series, the Caps lead 2-1 in that contest to Major League Baseball. The Rockies were in San Diego. Padres 4-0, and the Rockies were shut out. Unusual development there. And the Yankees and Nationals were rained out. The game stopped at 3-3. They will continue that at 5 o'clock Eastern Time in Washington. The White Sox and Pirates in Pittsburgh. Pirates shut out the White Sox. White Sox have not been doing very well this year. Cleveland and the Tigers in Detroit. Hard-hitting game in more than one way. 9-8 was the final score. The line score there was Cleveland 13 hits, and the Tigers 10 hits and 1 error. And let's go down here to the Blue Jays and Mets in New York. The Mets were all over them, 12-2 over Toronto. Mets had 16 hits and no errors, and the Blue Jays 6 hits and 1 error. Beat them by 10. In Boston, the Athletics and the Red Sox. Athletics 5-3 in that contest. The Athletics had 9 hits, 1 error, and the Sox had 10 hits and 1 error. Interesting. We tuned into that game. The Dodgers and Marlins in Florida. The Dodgers on the road and on the ropes at the same time. Marlins are 4-2. Marlins had 12 hits, no errors, and the L.A. Dodgers 5 hits and 1 error. Mr. Wood was a loser. He doesn't lose that many. Anyway, the Cubs in Atlanta. Cubs outlasted Atlanta 3-2. Cubs had 6 hits, 2 errors, and Atlanta 5 hits and 1 error. That was a TV game. Well, we watched some of it. The Cardinals and Twins in Minnesota. Twins are 4-1 over the Cards. Let's see. Mr. Cecil took the loss. Fernando Rodney, he's still around. He got the save for the Twins. Interesting there. Twins had 9 hits and no errors, and the Cardinals 2 hits and 1 error. Cardinals haven't been hitting much lately. Anyway, the Royals and Rays are in Kansas City. The Rays 6-5. The Brewers and D-backs in Arizona. D-backs 2-1 over the Brewers. I guess the Brewers drank too much beer. The Astros and Angels in California. Astros 5-3 there. And in 11, the Rangers and Mariners in Seattle. It was the Mariners 9-8 there. The line score, the Rangers had 12 hits, 1 error, and the Mariners 15 hits and 2 errors. The Mariners have been coming back this year. The Reds. Whoops. Lost my thing here. The Reds and Giants in San Francisco. Reds lost a game there, but anyway, Giants 5-3, and Giants had 11 hits, 1 error, and the Reds 7 hits. Yeah. And rain got the Phillies and Orioles in Baltimore, the same rain, but in D.C. That does it for sports and our episode here. Medicaid cuts in Louisiana could kill you. We'd still work on that title. We'll figure it out here. Nonetheless, good day from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. We're still trying to improve things.